Broadcasting live from the IRSMedic studios, it's Parental Advisory. And we are live on Parental Advisory. Today, Anthony, we're talking about something that most people probably don't want to talk about, being audited by the IRS.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Now,
we're talking about that.
So generally, I think people have a negative impression of it. It's
Correct.
probably a bit scary.
Correct.
But your proposal is that everyone should be audited.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
It does sound crazy.
That's one of my little Jedi moves there, where I say something so crazy, and then people, well, then I'll give you my explanation. You're like, I see.
I get it.
Yeah, these audits are nuts. And I mean, we represent people with audits, and there's just nothing like it. I mean, and usually it's people before they come in to meet with us. That's when they're frightened beyond. They get that letter from a field agent. You know, you have two types of audits. You can have a field agent auditing you, or you have a mail audit.
Okay.
And it's all conducted by mail, and it's usually somebody from Memphis, Tennessee, who is looking for documents substantiation. And most stuff is done by the mail. Those are the correspondence audits, or core audit in IRS speak. But they can be just as damaging, even though there's not someone coming to face to meet you. Mm-hmm. But those field audits, they're a real thing there.
So somebody comes knocking on your door?
Well, they don't come knocking on your door first. Mm-hmm. They send you a notice from their local field agent, and you got to love that. You're seeing an IRS notice, you're like, and it says someplace close to where you live. You know, it's not from some distant center in Kansas City. I guess if you're Kansas City, it's not distant to
close,
you. But it's wow, and it actually has somebody's name on the back, handwritten on the front of it. And you open it up, and it's like that's what an audit letter looks like.
Uh-huh.
Wow. Okay. So what are they looking for? Okay. How bad is this going to be? And the thing is, it doesn't matter how good your stuff is and how well it is. But it's incredibly invasive. And this is really one of the reasons why I proposed my awesome tax, because this process by which you're audited and your entire life becomes fair game. It really does.
Yep.
Everything you're doing, an auditor can find out what kind of stores you buy stuff from.
Weird.
You know, like, well, we noticed you were at this hotel on this night, and then you stopped at this adult store half hour before, which, you know, I mean, that's the stuff we see.
Yeah.
You know, we see it's like, and you're like, okay, whatever, you're a client and whatever. I mean, somebody's going to those places. Yeah. Right? They're not there.
Not flourishing.
Right. It's like, don't worry about it. We've seen a lot. We see a lot of stuff. And I mean, we see a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't care. You know, you're a client. We're going to represent you. Whatever you do is your business. That's fine with us. But now it becomes, you know, the IRS wants to see.
That
wow.
seems weird.
So you,
do they check your website history?
Yeah, like, so you going to, there's some things.
Now, I'll admit again, there's many times on the show where I'm admitting I'm very naive. So the current audit system, 1% to 2% of taxpayers are audited, correct? On average.
What about that? And I did hear our ghost guitar play. Did you hear that?
I did.
I know. That was our ghost foam guitar play. That was amazing.
That was really good.
For those of you who are not watching on video, some foam fell from our foam sound barriers and landed onto my 12-string guitar, strung for 6 strings. And so does that mean anything?
Maybe now Chen will believe in the ghost.
Maybe now. What more can you look for,
Proof.
right? That's it, proof.
We've got it recorded.
There it is, recorded. I think this will definitely be our most popular webcast. Watch.
The ghost.
Right here. Right here. Yes, that's it.
So
well,
now
you know what?
We're
remarkably cool for being in a haunted podcast studio, I would just say.
Very cool.
Wow. So
here's where I felt naive when we started talking about this. I assumed the government, when they audited people, it was sort of random. And to me, that seems scarier. Like, oh, you might get audited. But no, it's actually, they look for certain things. Mm-hmm. Can they randomly audit people, or they have to have criteria that you meet to make them have the red flag go up?
Well, that's always the thing. Red flag. It's always the thing. Audit red flags. Mm-hmm. Red flag. I find that term of art a little weird. Red flag. Mm-hmm. Why not like fluorescent orange? Right? I mean, that's what you use. That's like the safety color. Red is sort of hidden. Your shirt is red, but it's not saying a red flag. Well, here's my question to you. I'd answer your question with another question. If you were the IRS, would you audit people by random? Would you?
I would do both.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. This is why I wouldn't audit people by random, because most people are wage earners. Okay. And most people's tax reporting things are all submitted by third parties. So I'm not going to worry about them. I don't even need them to file a return to know what they made. I don't even need, I can do it without any of their input.
You know what? Now that you say that, one thing I read that sort of blew my mind is the IRS has a computer system where it scans W-2s and makes sure that there's a computer system that checks to make sure the numbers match.
All right. Automated underreporting unit.
Yeah.
AUR, yeah. That is where a lot of things come from. Like, wait a second, we saw that you had this income you didn't report. Now, if you get a 1090 or if you get an interest statement or something, don't expect them to automatically say, hey, you paid us too much.
Yeah.
Why don't you take a little bit of this back?
Red flag.
You know, we had a red flag that you paid way too much.
Too much.
This is really the tax treatment you could have taken.
Yep.
You know, we noticed that you did this. This would be much better for you,
Yeah.
right?
Not going to happen.
Yeah, you would never want to audit. Most people, there's no reason at all to audit them.
There's not enough to
There
catch.
really isn't there. There's nothing there. These are their wages. This is their home mortgage. This is what they paid for childcare. Sometimes that's not reportable, but all of it's really easy. And you're just talking about normal stuff. There's nothing really there to get. What are you looking at? Their taxes already paid. Really, who's going to be audited is self-employed individuals. That's where it's at, because now the IRS can get into a business and sort of open up and to see all what kind of goodies they can find.
Oof.
Yeah.
You know, if you do Google IRS tax audit, you're going to get a ton of websites, red flags where you might be audited.
Yeah, red flags for your audit. And everyone wants to know, will this give me
what could I do?
Will this give me an audit red flag?
Well, I found more reasons that there are red flags than there aren't. I mean, there was just countless reasons. Taking higher than average deductions, taking large charitable deductions, claiming rental losses, taking an alimony deduction, writing off a loss for a hobby or activity, especially horses.
Horses, yeah, the people love the horses. Don't put horses.
And running a small
ponies.
business.
Write down ponies.
Ponies.
Or the breed.
So yeah, it just seems like the list is pretty endless.
Right, but nobody really knows because the IRS doesn't let its inside data to say, hey, this is why we're auditing you. You have to kind of guess. Yeah, right, because if you knew.
True.
Right?
Okay.
So they don't really know it. There's things
They didn't leave a loophole for me?
They didn't give it away. So you kind of have to backwards check. Like, that's what we do is we see what's coming in for audits because things change time. 1 year it might be plumbers they're going after. And now what we're seeing now is a lot of passive losses from partnerships. That's what we're seeing a lot of. And a lot of the stuff is completely legitimate. But they're like, well, you had this loss after loss. It's like, well, did you check out the economy? Have you been looking at that, guys? Mm-hmm. And so that's really one they've been hammering on. That's a lot of the passive losses. Also, what we know will be happening soon is right now with the offshore sort of storm, they have a lot of people they're training to be auditors for the most complicated thing ever, international taxation.
Wow.
And so once those disclosures dry up, now they're going to be pointing to say, hey, wait, we have all these highly trained people who can detect very valuable penalties and things. Let's send them back to the plumbers. No, they'll say, let's stick with people with foreign sounding names, right?
Yep.
And foreign, let's check them because there's a lot of horrible things they can do with them. In addition, not just assessing tax penalties, but those Bank Secrecy Act penalties, those FBARs, which we talked about before, that can reach 50% of account value that they can assess for 6 years. So that's where they're going to be headed, and it's going to be pretty nasty. The IRS has to rule by fear and intimidation. Mm-hmm. Unless they get the information. I mean, a lot of the stuff they get the information. They don't need you, taxpayer. They don't. It doesn't matter. Here's your W-2. Here's your deductions that are pretty normal. It's fine. They don't need anything more. Mm-hmm. But for the self-employed, for the smaller business, for the business that doesn't have a whole compliance team, the business that's trying to get going, the business that has a cash flow that goes up and down. You are the one they want the most. They want to rule by fear and intimidation because they only have the staff to go after that 1-2%.
Mm-hmm. So they need big fish.
They need big fish, and they need to make an example. And I mean, it's very clear. They definitely, that's their policy.
Yep.
We need to make an example. We're going to give you these penalties because we're going to assume there's other years you were doing things bad too. And also we want to make sure people know if you get caught, this is what's going to happen.
So now if you get audited, they look back. They don't just look at that year.
Usually what happens is they'll send you an audit letter that's 1 year.
Okay.
Oh, we just want to investigate this. Maybe it's 2 years. We just want to investigate this one little thing. And so it's a bait. It's a bait to get you like, okay, I don't need to get an attorney. This isn't going to be that bad. They're just looking for this. I can get them this. This isn't going to be that bad. Mm-hmm. What's the worst that could happen? And so it's really that person. I'm going to tell you, the person who is the worst person is the person who has nothing to hide. Just like the person, the cops just have a few questions for you. Mm-hmm. Oh, sure, officer. Oh, I have nothing to hide, so let me just give you everything. Mm-hmm. They're asking you a question because they have suspicions about you. And whatever you're saying is there to confirm what they already know. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's why you're being asked. It's not because they're interested in you and they want to we just want to clear up your good name. No. My name was good. You guys, what the hell? What do you mean? Clear up my good name. That's exactly what it is. And so it's that person who has nothing to hide. Oh boy, because your guard is down, and and most auditors now, they tend to be younger. A lot of the older ones are sort of retired, but they tend to be younger. And I'll say it, they tend to be attractive females. They do. They tend to be, really, and they also nice. Tend to, and like they're very nice. And you can just tell, like, these were always sort of the goody two shoes. They were always the teacher's pet. They never did anything wrong that you knew of. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, God, they just sort of kind of keep breeding them. Like, wow, you're very pretty. And I would say that.
I'll tell you anything you want.
Right. It's like, and I would, it's nice to meet you. And okay, they seem, and I'm looking, I'm like, man, they seem nice enough. I'm like, I could see somebody, I'm like, oh my God, they are designed to disarm. Like, oh, let me try to be all schmoozy with this person. And they'll be mesmerized. Okay. And they'll just be on their laptop, just laptoping away with
just verify some information.
Just some things. Okay. And everything's going fine. And you're like, yeah. I got her. Yeah, it's not going to be that bad. And then like, oh, you know what? I'm going to have to take a look in another year. My supervisor says I need to take another look in another year just because this fell out of our threshold. So I'm going to need to examine this year too. So can you get me those bank statements? Banks. Now you're onto bank statements, and now you're onto 3 years of bank statements, and now things will be disallowed. And then their software is crazy. It's completely crazy because it makes up numbers that don't even add up, but it will still add up to a whole bill, and then they multiply it by 3, add on the penalties, and then you get a bill that you won't be able to sit down. And how did you do this to me? This girl broke your heart. Broke your heart.
She was so sweet. I really thought she liked me.
I thought
she was on my side.
Right. I thought we were going to have coffee after this together. Jeez.
She was about truth and justice.
And truth and justice. And there was an auditor. We've dealt with this office out in Oregon. Not this auditor, but the office we dealt with. The auditor was. I looked at the picture. She was older but attractive. And she was auditing a gentleman who was, I would say, I believe I saw his picture. Maybe I'm inventing it. Maybe I'm inventing man. But he was a rustic, kind of good-looking guy. Mm-hmm. And so she said to him, this audit could go real easy or real hard.
She did not.
What I want you to do is service me.
No.
Internal Revenue Service. And the emphasis on service. And he declined. And then he whistle blew it, and she was fired. But that's the kind of stuff it takes to fire an auditor, by the way, and you have to prove it. So that does happen. And
wow.
I am sure that's not, I'm sure there's many people who would just go along with it to say, well.
Generally, don't you look for a monetary bribe?
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, I know, right? Like, so the IRS will screw me unless I screw you. All right.
Deal.
All right. So that does happen. And, it's hard for the IRS to police everybody. Mm-hmm. And you don't know what they're out. I mean, you're sending these people out into the field. That is to people's houses.
Yep.
And I think it's like, God, that's scary. I mean, these young girls, you're sent to somebody's house who you're accusing of being, evading taxes and everything, right? I mean, isn't that a mean and nasty person? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not that mean and nasty. You won't send someone completely undefended by herself to confront this person on how much money they owe. Mm-hmm. So what is it? Right. It's like, that doesn't make sense. If they're really horrible people, you're sending
like a
small, petite girl with a laptop.
Yes.
She can throw the laptop and run quick, I guess. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. I never thought of that. The last thing I want to touch on before we hit our first break is something you said that struck me. It's odd that you're given a public defender for a criminal offense, but not for an audit. Holy crap.
Yeah. And there's some strange things that go on, and I see a lot of strange things. Here's something to think of. Whenever you read a press release or a story about somebody being convicted of tax evasion, you're going to see something like, and they owed $250,000. They evaded $250,000 of taxes or underpaid $1 million. 50% of those cases, that person's going to and then in the press release, it's going to say, this is proof that we're going to crack down on high income people who don't pay their fair share. 50% of the time, that's my guess, but it's a substantial amount. Those people qualify for a federal public defender. So try to put that together. We have an income tax that's only supposed to affect the rich.
Right.
And whatever the numbers these people owe, it's like, well, you must have had some kind of money to evade. If you owe $1 million to the IRS, you clearly made $1 million. If the tax rate is, 30%, then you must have made, you must be sitting on millions. How much did you spend? I mean, this doesn't make any sense. How can you qualify for a public defender on one hand and evade all these taxes? It's because the system is pretty effed up. Yeah. Because it's completely screwed up. Most people will qualify for a public defender. The IRS, gets a whole bunch of numbers they trump up, in order to get that sentencing guideline. They want that big number for the press release. Oftentimes, the defendant doesn't fight the number, or that number includes so many penalties and interest, and so many things that they really don't owe. So they get that press release, and there it is, the wealthy. A nurse qualifying for a public defender. And there's sort of that's just sort of kind of how stupid the whole system is. And when people say, it's good, we got to do is to take down the 1%, that nonsense. It's like, you have no idea what the 1% is. You're completely clueless in your narrow world. If you're talking 1%, you're just telling me you're ignorant and I don't need to listen to you anymore. That's what you're saying. So when we talk about, you get a public defender for a tax evasion case, right? And now there's something wrong with that because something's wrong with what the IRS charges. For most people, and I used to do, criminal defense work, like criminal, like murder.
Actual criminal.
I actually did that, and I was in there, was in that scene for a bit. And this is the thing. And really one of the reasons why I got out of it was that, you'd help someone, you'd get them a great deal, or you'd get them to drop the charges, and wouldn't you know it, they were just innocently charged with another crime the next weekend.
Oh, that sucks.
And you're like, oh, Jesus Christ. And you're looking at like, well, this time they got you. I'm like, I just turned myself inside out to try to get you a deal. And what do? You're back at the same place. You didn't do anything. You're doing the same exact thing. And it's like, you know what? The cops are freaking right.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the thing where I'm like, you know what? I'm done with this, because this is one of the things that no one ever tells you this in life, really. This is one of those things you need to learn. There's two kinds of people: those who get arrested and those don't.
It's true.
Okay? If you get arrested once, you're going to be arrested again and again and again. And when you're representing a client, and one of the best things to do is walk into the courthouse where you get a client who's 30 years old, and then the judge is waiting to hear all the priors. This is his first offense. And then the judge is going to look up. Like, what is he doing here then?
Innocent.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Case
okay,
closed.
hey, we're sorry for this whole inconvenience. Wow. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
All right, hey, you know what? It's a pleasure to meet you. It's just going to be like, oh my God. I mean, you're dealing with guys with 30 priors on probation, on parole for the probation violation, and oh my God, everything. And you're coming in, right? You're coming in, and this is your first time. You look completely different than everybody else, completely different, and you will be treated completely different, and your attorney will be treated completely different too. So that for most people, their threat of a criminal charge being in the system is not the criminal system that they know of. You're just not going to get it. What the biggest risk in your life is something happening with the IRS, them getting the wrong idea. Now, will you, if an audit goes bad, will you be referred to criminal investigation? You could. It does happen. 30-40% of indictments come from that. It does happen. But really, your biggest risk to your financial safety is the IRS. It really is. It's not some crazy arrest thing. It's not somebody suing you. It's the IRS auditing you. This is where it happens. And yet, now what the money at stake is something that you will not be able to climb out from under. And then what it costs to hire actual attorney who will give you it's like we're supposed to have an equal protection. Hey man, I'm going to tell you, somebody who hires us versus somebody who hires, or does it themselves, there's no difference. There's just completely no difference. You're going to get a completely different result with an attorney. When the IRS knows they're dealing with an attorney, it's different than even a hotshot CPA. It just is. You
mentioned that. You said that they even treat you guys differently.
They treat us completely different. Your impression of how they treat you, you're going to say, oh, I hate that guy. He's a real jerk. I'm like, and I'll say, really? Kind of like him.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Sure. If you say so.
Yep.
It's just completely different. And I think it's wrong that there's some people who, some people don't see the value in hiring an attorney, or some people can't. Either way, this is wrong. If you go and do something completely dirtbaggy, you will qualify for a federal public defender or a regular public defender. You will. Mostly everybody does. It's really they look at your balance sheet, and everybody kind of does. That's one of the reasons why criminal attorneys, there's very few. There's not any criminal law used to be like an actual business.
Yeah.
Everybody's a public defender. Everyone takes a deal. Nothing goes to trial.
Oh.
There's no criminal law anymore. It doesn't exist. I mean, very rarely does it exist.
Yep.
So this is your one shot where something's actually going to happen. The biggest impact on your life of having an attorney. This is the time you need to have an attorney. In your real estate, you're required to have an attorney. Look, I did that. Your rubber stamp. Do you want the deal or not? Because this is what the bank says you have to do. Okay, I'm gonna make sure you sign everything. That's it. The title company's looking at the title, or should be, and then maybe you're looking at the title, but you're going off of what the title searcher said in his report. You actually didn't go down and say, oh, okay, here it is. Here's his copy. You're taking his words. There's no real point where it's so critical to have an attorney, and so many people just don't have it. Yet the dollars at risk are huge because they're going to say you have money you don't have.
It's like you guys are the professionals at dealing with fear and intimidation.
Yeah. And, and then sometimes what's worse is people aren't intimidated or have fear when they should. This is huge. Think about your worst result. Now multiply it by 3. There you go. In retrospect, when people hire us after an audit goes bad, and we can help out. We definitely do. We definitely make the situation a lot better. But it would have been better if they came to us
first.
Woody just went straight to the police.
None of this would have happened. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And then in your argument for everyone should be audited, we're going to talk about how it used to be and how that could potentially still sort of fit into our system. Right after this on Parental Advisory.
Claudine, would you believe that there is always going to be somebody who charges less than IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn?
I guess, but isn't it important that the problem be fixed once and be done correctly?
How about having your filings done as accurately and completely as possible?
Isn't it important that we anticipate the wrong things the IRS may do and have an action plan in place to fix them?
Do you want to feel emotionally secure throughout the whole process?
Do you want to ensure that you aren't billed for communicating with us?
Is it important that you can exchange documents securely with your law firm?
Is it important to you that your tax filings not be blown up years down the road when the IRS discovers sloppy mistakes?
Do you want a law firm that will anticipate the mistakes you might make and educate you on how to avoid having an IRS problem ever again?
Do you want someone that's on your side?
Do you want someone who will treat you with respect and know that we are with you till the end?
Is it important to know that any legal work is guaranteed and warranted?
Is it important to know that we give a shit?
IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP. Real tax attorneys for tough tax problems. And we're back.
Kind of works.
I love it.
Yeah.
We are live on Parental Advisory talking about why Anthony thinks everyone should be audited. And something else you told me I didn't know, you teach me something new every day, Anthony, is tax returns used to be simple and everyone was audited originally from 1913. You're thinking till about World War II?
Right. Because most people didn't have a filing requirement. It was for income over $5,000, which was rather substantial at the time. So tax returns, you filed a tax return knowing full well it was going to be audited every year. And because, as the income tax was pitched back when, it's like, guys, it's only going to go for the richest 1% of the time, right? And yet the richest 1% were the ones promoting the income tax too, just like we have now. The rich are like, oh yeah, we need this income tax. It'll be a good thing. It'll be good. Fairness. Guys, you know what? I'm not giving enough to the government. We need to get this. Because, they knew their way. They knew there was going to be a nice little carve out for them. And they knew they could use this as a bludgeon to keep their competition down. Nothing has changed. So that because there were very few auditors, and actually the tax code was just much simpler. It was just much simpler. You'd file your return, and then an auditor would come to verify your numbers. Oh. And I think even before the Income Tax Revenue Act of 1913, Mark Twain did comment on the income tax, and the guy just stopped by his house and said, "Hey, let's talk about how much money you made." It was a very informal thing.
Yeah.
And then Mark Twain learned about deductions. It's like, oh, well, you mean I can deduct this? And it was a very humorous thing, but then he's like, he was given a tax bill though. So everybody was audited because there were fewer taxpayers. There's much fewer taxpayers, much simpler. And then and then if you're doing something wrong, like let's say we don't have to worry about, that's not taxable, or this is a legitimate deduction. You're going to find out the next year. Hey man, what are you doing? You can't do that. I can't. Oh. Whoa. Yeah, here, fix that. And all right, luckily, the damage isn't too bad. Here, pay this and don't do that again. Okay. And no one has to scare the crap out of you and worry about your future compliance or past compliance. Just like this year you're out of compliance. So penalties and whatever. It's like, okay, we don't need to do that. We're going to be looking at this every year. And this is the way it's done in other countries, by the way.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. There's not this huge adversarial thing in Germany. It's not like this. There's a country a little more civilized. It's just not... It's not like this. You don't have this thing where random audits. This randomness is like you have to make that example out of somebody. So one person is going to take the guilt of the collective. It is kind of like collective punishment.
Yep.
One person bears the brunt of everyone doing something wrong the IRS suspects.
And there's probably a lot more corruption now than there was then.
I have no comment.
Just saying.
I have no comment on that at all.
So here was my question to you is what sort of manpower would the IRS need to do this?
Well, under the current system, it would be impossible. It would be completely impossible for the IRS to audit every taxpayer. Right now, it's even the IRS has problems auditing the taxpayers it's auditing now. That they really don't have the manpower for that now.
No, the average was 1% to 2%, but in 2014 it was 0.86 of all individual tax returns were audited. And of course, John Koskinen is always crying poor because he wants more money.
Right, but they have weird places they allocate the funds that they do get. So, maybe not there. Who knows? And maybe if you didn't let that $20 billion go through taxpayer, and identity theft.
They did 1.2 million individual audits in 2014, the lowest level in 11 years. And they said that the revenue collected from the audits, which is obviously an important source of income to the federal government, it was sank to a 13-year low. From 2005 to 2010, the revenue audits brought in averaged $14.7 billion annually. Since 2010, it dropped to about $10.5 billion because they just don't have the manpower to go out and do the audits. So it's sort of...
Why are you, right, at this point, what are you doing? Because, so $10.5 billion is the revenue they brought in through audits. Now, we know that they're losing twice that through identity theft of what they admit to.
And that's since 2010.
Yeah. That's since.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is just simply amazing.
Yep.
So they're not getting the revenue that they claim is there. They always talk about that. The IRS always talks about the tax gap between, this is what we should be collecting and this is what we are collecting. Yet, man, your evidence just doesn't seem to suggest that it's there. Maybe this economy does bite, and maybe all these losses people are claiming are kind of legitimate. And maybe you're just making people, you're driving people miserable for a pittance.
Yeah. But, in terms of personnel, if it was simplified, then you could probably take a ton of these people that are now trained for OVDP and all this other crap. I mean, it just seems like it would be simpler across the board.
So I think, and it's strange that here I am saying these auditors are kind of wasting their time for a pittance, and then I'm saying, well, the solution is to audit everybody. Well, because first of all, auditing nobody, that's not going to happen.
Right.
I know that. I live in a political reality. That's not going to happen. If everybody was audited, there were things that would have to happen because they don't have the manpower, because of what's required, because of all the tax requirements and tax treatments. And again, the foreign stuff, you need several, an auditor could maybe handle 12 of those a year, maybe. And I mean, there's some really brilliant auditors who I've learned a ton of stuff from.
Yep.
And there's not enough of those people in the world that they are truly exceptional people. Exceptional means not everybody's like them. You can't train someone to be like that. And I'm not trying to dump on other people. There's just people that are brilliant who work at the IRS.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't just say, oh, you, be like him. Doesn't work like that. So what you need to do is just simplify the whole damn thing and then make everybody auditable. And I think you're going to be, what you're going to force is that things have to get simplified because you need a basic level employee can understand this.
Yep.
Something an average human being can understand.
Yes. Right now, the average auditor makes about $60,000, but the gap was pretty wide. It was like as low as 35 and then as high as
100,
80.
over 100.
Yeah.
No, and you can get over 100 as well.
Yeah, for the good ones.
Yeah, the good one. Yeah, I mean, the good ones, it is kind of strange. The good ones, there is that revolving door because the good ones are, they might cap out at 120. A lot of them are living in Washington, D.C., where 120 doesn't do you anything.
You're taking the bus when you make
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, there it is. It's like, okay, you can get this there at the IRS and then you leave. And there is that rotating sort of where they go work in the private sector. And so now they have all the IRS information on the outside. And now it's like, well, who can afford to hire them? And who can afford to hire? There's just not enough people out there. And I mean, I think that's really it. There's not enough good tax attorneys. There's not enough good auditors in existence. There's just not. It takes a unique set of skills that, I don't know, whatever percentage of the population. And I mean, you have to be able to spot things very quickly. You have to just know, you have to trust your gut. You have to be able to have the discipline to stay on something that's very dry. It's like, okay, someone just dropped a whole stack of things like this. They all look the same, but you can find BS in there. You can find it. It's like, it's all in there and you just have to stick with it for hours after hours. And not enough people very few people have the intelligence and creativity and the stamina to also do the hard work. And when you're bored and rather be thinking about something else, stick with it.
Yep. And it is, like we've said, it's one of the most complicated things on the earth right now. The last thing I read that I thought was sort of funny is the IRS auditors are instructed to close audits within 28 months of the date you filed your tax return or the date it was due, whichever's later. And all I could think of is comments you've made in the past in that it's not necessarily closed correctly. It's 28 months. Oh, I got to get this off my desk. Let me just go... Okay, that one's done. Shuffle it off maybe to somebody else's desk, or it's not done correctly and it ends up coming back.
And that's a great point. What they do in that case, Claudine, is something called a quick assessment because the statute's about close to expiring and they don't know what's right or wrong. So they just say, well, we don't know what's right or wrong, but here you go. Here's a bill. A taxpayer's given that. Now, you would, in that case, you fight that tooth and nail. It's a quick assessment. Don't take it. Fight it. Go to appeals. You don't like that? Go to tax court.
Yep.
Fight it. And the fact is that why was there a quick assessment made in the first place? Because your case should have been in and out already. You should have given them stuff so they could have ruled in your favor already. But you were probably delaying. You probably didn't know what they were doing. But what you want to do, the best way to, the best audit is one where I've said 3 words to the auditor. Hey, how you doing? Would you like some coffee? Yeah, have a seat here. They come to our office, or we'll mail it to them. They come to our office and we're, very friendly. Oh, hey, here you go. Yeah. And then at the end, we just give them everything that they're looking for, all nice and reviewed. They sit in our conference room and they stay in there all day on their own network. Look, here's our Wi-Fi password. No, that's all right. We have our own. Okay. And let them go. And then at the end, they're like, okay, I have what I need. I think we're done. So I'll send you my report. Okay, great. And then we get the proposed changes and, we'll take a look at them, review them with the client to say, okay, do we accept this or do we want to continue to fight? And we're saying, well, I think we have some room here to knock it down in appeals. I think we have something here. By the way, IRS auditors hate appeals. I never realized that until, our ex-IRS employees here. Oh, appeals. I hate those guys. They always undo everything we do.
Good to know.
All our hard work. Oh, God, we hate them.
Inside secrets of the IRS.
Yeah, just use the appeal process they set up. Right.
Yeah.
Use that. Yeah.
All right.
Amazing.
So one last break, and then what I want you to do when we're back, Anthony, is I want to sum up. I want you to convince me that everyone in the
All right.
United States should be audited
All
right
right.
after this.
Claudine, how would you explain the IRS to an enemy?
I would say the IRS is about truth and justice and fairness.
Now, how would you explain the IRS to a friend?
In that case, I would say the IRS is like calm waters with sharks swimming right below the surface.
Can you see the sharks?
You might.
Can you feel the sharks?
They do tend to bite.
Now, let's say you wanted to go into the water. Could you safely go into the water with the sharks in the water as well?
You could safely do it with a shark cage, say.
Now, could IRSMedic be your IRS shark cage?
It's what we do best.
IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems. And we're back live on Parental Advisory. And now, Anthony, hit me, man. Why should everyone be audited?
Why should everybody be audited?
Yep.
Because this current system makes far too much of an example out of the few people that do come into a grip that the result is completely unfair. A tiny random portion of the population pays the price of the IRS's anger and vengeance. And yes, the entity does have that. They do say they are trying to set an example. The tax compliance burden should be spread out. That's the problem, that we are used to living in a land where 90 or 10% of the people pay for 90% of things, and we think that's fine. Okay, but why do they have to bear the entire tax compliance burden as well? If you don't have money, fine, I understand that, but you should have a part in this as well. As it is now, if you're low income, they're not interested in compliance. It causes you to be separated from this country. There's those who need to comply and need to pay for everything, and then there's others who don't need to do a damn thing and they get away with it. And if they want to claim a fraudulent earned income tax credit, that's fine. And anyone coming by to bother them, who cares? There's no money to go after. It's not a decent enough press release. How the tax code is completely scamming everybody. There are people who intentionally rip off the U.S. government by taking fraudulent refunds. Okay? Mm-hmm. They take millions of dollars, and yet last week there was one where somebody had a smaller scam of $1.5 million. Two people, and that's where I said, my scam, I think I can get about $30 million and be gone. Mm-hmm. He got 1.5. He got caught, but this was the interesting thing about it. He was caught stealing $1.5 million, and he qualified for a public defender. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But no one asked him where the money was, really. And I didn't notice that he owed any taxes on that, too. I was like, that's strange. If stolen money is taxable, you got to pay taxes on it. You meet the Glenshaw Glass test of whether that income is taxable. Where's his tax bill for the $1.5 million he stole? He owes money in taxes, but they didn't get him on that. That's strange. And he qualified for a public defender, and the money's somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so what was the fine he was given? $250,000.
Shut up.
So now let's compare that with the case of someone convicted of tax evasion. Let's suppose someone under-withheld from their pay. Mm-hmm. And this is something that they've been doing now. People under-withheld from their pay, and then they bag them for tax evasion. And that is and this is generally the thing. It's like, well, I didn't think it was a big deal because the IRS knows where I work, and if they wanted to levy my wages, they'd levy my wages. I wasn't really trying to evade anything. I just didn't think it was a big deal, which is kind of a goddamn good point. If you're evading taxes and you're taking no steps, the only thing you're doing is like, yeah, I didn't withhold my money, but if the IRS wanted the money,
it's right here.
I've had levies. They levied me before. Yeah. It's right here, right? So now they go and whack that person who only failed to give over what they earned to the IRS. They hit that person with that same $250,000 fine they don't have, and then some bullshit tax bill. Complete bullshit tax bill of made up numbers and phony crap. And so the person who and their sentence is about going to be the same. So the person who didn't withhold taxes gets the same friggin' punishment as the criminal mastermind. And that's sort of how this is all a symptom of how screwed up of what has occurred. There's people who have to comply with the law and they get screwed left and right. And then there's the people who intentionally break the law. And man, what are we going to do? A year and a half for stealing $1.5 million of other people's money. That's not somebody I'm going to be defending. No, dude.
And I'm going to tell you, they've got 1.3 buried in the desert after you paid their $200,000. I'm
going to guess this. Your record, you're going to have a criminal record. You're somebody who they've seen before. Like, oh, yeah, you. Yeah, whereas the people, they're tax evaders, this is their first time ever. Mm-hmm. Ever. Maybe a traffic ticket or something. But they're like, holy crap. Wow. U.S. Marshal, lots of guns. Federal court. Whereas the regular day-to-day dirtbag is just in and out of state court all day long. Okay, hey, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. It's all very casual. Mm-hmm. But, oh, my God, you didn't pay your taxes. We'll make it a federal case, right?
Have you seen my big guns?
And so that's really the problem with it is that the current tax system, the audit system, segregates citizens by ability to pay. What your ability to pay completely changes your treatment. If you're a dirtbag, you can do whatever the hell you want. If you're an upright citizen, God bless you if the IRS comes knocking.
And they will. All right, so if the IRS comes knocking, from what I'm understanding, talking about tomorrow's show, we're going to talk about private letter ruling.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that sounds weird and scary, but once you break it down, it's pretty easy to understand.
Yeah, this is one of the things to stop the IRS from knocking.
Yep.
And some of its complexities, we'll say, what the hell? The fact that this program makes sense makes the least amount of sense.
That's tomorrow. We'll be live at 11 right here on Parental Advisory. Thanks for joining Parental Advisory, hosted by Anthony Parent, produced by Claudine Gindel, that's me, engineered by Chris Chen. For more podcasts, visit our website at parentaladvisoryshow.com and like us on Facebook to submit story ideas. We'd like to thank our sponsors, IRSMedic.com, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.